Welcome back to the Darwin Awards, where the only thing stronger than natural selection is the human urge to build something incredibly stupid with their own two hands. In this special edition, we dive into the brilliant minds who looked at safety regulations, science, and common sense and said, nah, I've got duct tape and ambition. From plastic bag paragliders to DIY submarines made of soda bottles, this is the Hall of Fame for homemade disasters where inventiveness meets inevitability. And gravity always wins. Let's take a tour of the most inspired inventions that turned into final projects. Number 1. In sunny California, a man decided to eliminate a wasp nest by combining two things: a vacuum cleaner and a can of aerosol insecticide. He figured he'd suck the wasps in and spray them into oblivion at the same time. Problem solved, right? Not quite. See, aerosol cans contain flammable gas, and vacuum motors get hot. Real hot. Like spontaneous combustion hot. Mid-operation, his vacuum cleaner turned into a flamethrower. The result? A small explosion, singed eyebrows, and a destroyed garage. The wasps survived. The man didn't. Nature won. Humans with bad ideas, 0. Number 2, because nothing says Texan innovation like strapping explosive to plumbing supplies, one man in rural Texas decided to build a cannon out of steel pipes, duct tape, and black powder. His goal: to hunt deer. Like a patriot with no concept of ballistics, the cannon did fire. Unfortunately, the chamber couldn't handle the pressure and exploded on the first shot. Shrapnel flew everywhere, and the hunter became the hunted by physics. No deer were harmed in the making of this disaster, only egos and internal organs. Number 3. In a bid to revolutionize fishing, an Oregon man created a homemade device that sent electrical pulses into water to stun fish for easy collection. Great idea in theory, if you're a Bond villain. He even connected it to a folding lawn chair so he could relax while zapping the fish into submission. What he failed to consider was that electricity and water tend to interact enthusiastically. During a trial run by the lake, he leaned over to adjust a wire, touched an exposed conductor, and received 220 volts straight through his body. On the bright side, he did catch a few fish with his face. Number 4. A Canadian man, inspired either by extreme frugality or pure delusion, decided to test his DIY survival skills. He believed he could create a parachute using a few old bedsheets, some rope, and what one can only describe as misplaced confidence. His engineering consisted of tying the sheets together and jumping off a 10-story apartment building without any prior test run. Maybe he thought gravity was polite in Canada. Spoiler, the parachute didn't work. It flapped uselessly in the wind as he plummeted straight to the ground. Emergency services arrived quickly, but they could only confirm what physics had already proven. Cotton sheets do not a parachute make. Number 5. In what might be the most literal interpretation of Fast and Furious, a man in the Arizona desert decided his old Chevrolet needed just a little more horsepower. So naturally, he strapped a decommissioned JATO rocket to the trunk. You know, the kind used on military jets. He figured he'd break a speed record, or at least beat traffic. According to observers, i.e. the one friend brave enough to watch, the car launched down a straight desert road, accelerating so fast that it became airborne within seconds. Unfortunately, the driver forgot two minor details: brakes and steering. The Chevy went full Wile E. Coyote, soaring uncontrollably, crashing headfirst into a cliff and creating a crater so perfect it could be mistaken for government testing. There were no survivors, but hey, at least he got to take off one last time. Number 6. Of course, this happened in Florida. A man named Ricky, whose only engineering credential was a YouTube playlist called Stuff That Shouldn't Fly, decided that his riding lawnmower was destined for the skies. With the help of duct tape, sheer delusion, and a propeller stolen from a boat, he transformed his lawn equipment into a prototype aircraft. The problem? Liftoff. Or more accurately, the lack of it. He gave it full throttle on a plywood ramp, reached 15 miles per hour, and flipped spectacularly. The propeller still spinning smacked him right in the head. Ricky's final words, allegedly, "It was working until it wasn't." He dreamed of flying, and now, who knows, maybe he's finally airborne, just not in the way he hoped. Number 7. The good old British spirit of innovation. Our next contestant thought the best use for leftover propane tanks and some metal pipes was building a homemade jetpack. He wasn't a physicist, but he had seen Iron Man 17 times. So basically a professional, right? During his test flight, which consisted of standing in a field behind a pub, he ignited the device and actually took off for about 3 seconds. Then he veered straight into a tree head first. Locals said it was the most exciting thing to happen in town since a cow wandered into the pharmacy. Darwin Award well deserved for thinking propane and flight were a smart mix. Number 8. Meet Carl. Tired of break-ins, he decided to protect his house with science. He rigged up a magnetic burglar trap involving copper wire, magnets, and a healthy disregard for basic electrical safety. Think Home Alone meets Frankenstein's lab. Except he forgot to label the off switch. While testing his device, Carl accidentally triggered the current. Zap! He fried himself on the spot like a frozen burrito in a faulty microwave. Ironically, his house hasn't been broken into since, because no one wants to rob the haunted, booby-trapped home of the electrocuted guy. Number 9. This next one is international, but just too jaw-dropping to skip. Pun fully intended. A chemistry student wanted to test how citric acid reacts with some white powder he thought was harmless. Turns out it wasn't citric acid. It was an industrial-grade explosive. He dipped chewing gum in the mix and shoved it in his mouth. Boom! Bye-bye, lower jaw. The lab ceiling also sustained minor damage. Doctors called it one of the most preventable accidents we've ever seen. His classmates now check labels twice, or just chew mint instead. Number 10. An Aussie inventor, possibly fueled by cheap beer and Finding Nemo, decided to build a submarine out of, you guessed it, plastic barrels, garden hose, and good vibes. He called it the Aqua Kangaroo. It was neither waterproof nor kangaroo-friendly. He launched into a local lake, descended about 4 feet, and then physics happened. Water poured in, panic ensued, and he found himself trapped in his homemade coffin. Emergency services found him hours later, still inside the sunken mess. Lesson: if it looks like trash, floats like trash, and smells like trash, it's not a submarine. Number 11. A Brazilian genius who looked at 5 flights of stairs and thought, nah, I'll invent vertical teleportation. Armed with nothing but a dream, some old rope, and a washing machine motor that definitely wasn't up to code, he built a homemade elevator outside his apartment building. Now, if you're thinking, surely he tested it without getting inside first, you clearly haven't met this guy. On its maiden voyage, The elevator lifted him a few floors before the ropes. Surprise! Snapped like overcooked spaghetti. Gravity did its thing. Witnesses say the sound was like a dropped piano. His invention did get him to the ground floor, just not in one piece. Number 12. Next up, a French innovator whose plumbing was a little clogged, and apparently so was his judgment. After trying every commercial drain cleaner and probably a baguette or two, he decided to make his own high-powered solution. And by solution, I mean explosives. That's right. He crafted a homemade pipe bomb to fix a clog. He dropped the device into the pipe, stepped back, and boom, the clog was gone. So was half the bathroom. And unfortunately, the inventor. Emergency services arrived to find a crater where a sink used to be. Moral of the story? Plumbers exist for a reason. Number 13. In Germany, one man decided that flying drones just weren't manly enough. So naturally, he attached drone propellers to a gasoline-powered lawnmower. Why, you ask? Because he wanted to create a super drone, capable of mowing lawns from the sky. You know, in case your grass is growing vertically. He powered it up, stood underneath it, because safety is for amateurs, and watched his Frankenmower rise into the air and promptly lose all stability. The flying machine spun like a blender and crash landed right on its proud creator. The only thing it successfully trimmed was his dignity and possibly a few vital organs. Number 14. Here's one from South Africa that combines innovation with terrible timing. A man there built a concealed firearm that looked exactly like a regular ballpoint pen. Impressive, right? James Bond would have been proud. But here's where it goes sideways. He decided to show it off to his buddies in a bar. Naturally, he pressed it to his own temple as a joke to prove it wasn't real. Except, it was very real and very loaded. Let's just say the demonstration ended the conversation and everything else. If he'd stuck to writing about guns instead of building them, he might have made it to dessert. Number 15. And now, we head to Russia, where a man's YouTube binge of science documentaries gave him a dangerous amount of confidence. He believed he could construct a functioning nuclear reactor in his garage with parts he salvaged from a junkyard. Yes, really. Wearing nothing more protective than a windbreaker and a headlamp, he assembled radioactive materials into what he described as a power source for the people. What he actually created was a health hazard with a Geiger counter that sounded like a rave. Weeks later, he checked into a hospital with severe radiation poisoning and never checked out. Officials found his reactor still humming in the garage. The neighbors now glow in the dark. Just kidding, probably. Number 16. Our journey into the world of inspired idiocy continues in India, where one man asked, "What if I turned a gas cylinder into a fuel tank for a bicycle?" And by gas, we don't mean gasoline. We mean a pressurized cooking gas cylinder, the kind that's usually nowhere near moving parts, sparks, or dreams. With zero regard for physics or his continued survival, he strapped the gas tank to the bike frame and wired it up. The plan? Use the gas to power a small engine. The reality? A spark from the motor met the highly flammable gas, and the whole contraption exploded like a low-budget film. The bike was vaporized, and so was any hope of this guy ever winning Inventor of the Year. Number 17. Next up, in Poland, a man decided the sky was the limit. Literally. He crafted a homemade paraglider out of plastic shopping bags and wooden planks. You read that right. His dream of flight was powered by the same materials used to carry groceries and make birdhouses. Against all odds and common sense, He actually got airborne. Briefly, about 50 meters, roughly 160 feet into the air, the wings shredded like wet napkins. Witnesses said the descent was graceful at first, then loud. Authorities described the event as a fatal misunderstanding of aerodynamics. Lesson: if your flight gear comes from a dollar store, maybe keep your feet on the ground. Number 18. Now let's go fishing. Explosively. In Thailand, a local fisherman had clearly grown tired of patience and bait. Instead, he whipped up a homemade underwater bomb, hoping to stun fish for easy collection. What he forgot, though, was basic positioning. See, he was already in the water when he tossed the bomb in. Shockingly, pun intended, it went off exactly as planned, only a little too close to the operator. Fish were stunned, so were nearby swimmers. And the fisherman, he went belly up faster than his intended catch. He did catch something, though, a one-way ticket to the afterlife. Number 19. Over in Mexico, a would-be diver decided scuba gear was overpriced and corporate nonsense. So, naturally, he built his own underwater suit using plastic bottles and a garden hose. Why? Because nothing says deep-sea safety like materials found at a recycling center and Home Depot. He strapped the bottles to his body for buoyancy and ran a hose from his mouth to the surface for air. Seems foolproof, right? Except for the part where water pressure, air compression, and basic physics exist. The hose slipped out mid-dive, and without proper air or flotation, he went down and didn't come back up. On the plus side, his commitment to recycling is now eternal. Number 20. We head into the wilds of Canada, where one hunter got very creative about wildlife defense. His idea: build a homemade explosive trap to deter bears. Nothing says welcome to nature like landmines. Using wires, gunpowder, and sheer recklessness, he set up his invention in a forest clearing. But while setting the trap, he accidentally triggered it. Turns out rigging explosives in the woods without a manual is a terrible idea. Authorities later said it was unclear what was more dangerous, the bears or this guy. To his credit, no bears were harmed. Just the man who wanted to outsmart them. And frankly, the bears are probably still laughing. Number 21. Chen, a 32-year-old local fireworks enthusiast, dreamed of flying to the stars and becoming famous as a folk inventor. He assembled a rocket from metal pipes purchased at a junkyard and dozens of fireworks tied together. His plan was simple: launch himself a few meters above the field, record it on video, and post it online. Chen used a homemade remote detonator to activate the fireworks and tied himself to the structure with seat belts from an old car. During launch, the rocket exploded due to an unstable mixture of gunpowder and improper placement of the tubes. Debris flew dozens of meters, and Chen suffered fatal injuries from the explosion and fire. Local residents reported that before the disaster, he shouted, "This will be legendary!" Number 22. 28-year-old Marco, a self-proclaimed physics genius, read up on pseudo-scientific forums about anti-gravity. He decided to create a device that would neutralize gravity using magnets and high-voltage current. In his garage, Marco assembled a structure made of powerful electromagnets, old transformers, and wires connected to a homemade 10,000-volt generator. His idea was to lift the metal platform on which he was standing. During the first test, Marco did not take into account that the wires were not insulated and that the magnets created an unstable electromagnetic field. When he turned on the device, he was electrocuted and the platform caught fire due to a short circuit. Neighbors found him already dead. In his notebook, Marco left notes about a revolution in transportation. Number 23. 35-year-old Bobby, a DIY enthusiast, decided to convert an old lawnmower into a motorcycle to impress his friends. He welded additional pipes to the lawnmower frame, installed a seat from an office chair, and attached wheels from a cart. The engine remained original, but Bobby added a homemade turbocharger from a compressed air cylinder. During a test drive on a country road, the design could not withstand the vibrations. The frame cracked and the front wheel fell off. Bobby lost control and crashed into a tree at a speed of 40 kilometers per hour. The police noted that a helmet could have saved him, but Bobby believed that real cowboys don't wear helmets. Number 24. 40-year-old Sergey found an old safe in his grandfather's garage that would not open. Instead of calling a locksmith, he decided to use homemade explosives made from gunpowder, from hunting cartridges, and fireworks fuses. Sergey placed the explosives inside the safe through a crack and lit the fuse, believing that a controlled explosion would open the lock. The explosion turned out to be much more powerful than he expected. The safe door flew off and the debris pierced the garage wall and Sergey himself. Neighbors reported that before the explosion, he shouted, "Now it'll be like in the movies!" Incidentally, the safe contained only old documents. Number 25. 29-year-old Jake, a speed enthusiast, decided to upgrade his old boat by attaching a Yamaha motorcycle engine to it. He welded the engine to the wooden deck and added a homemade propeller made from a metal barrel. Jake believed this would make his boat the fastest on the coast. During the first test on the lake, the boat accelerated to an unexpectedly high speed, but the wooden structure could not withstand the vibrations. The boat capsized, and Jake, who was not wearing a life jacket, became entangled in the debris and drowned. Local fishermen tried to save him, but it was too late. Number 26. Meet Rahul, a 30-year-old modern Aladdin who decided that the 21st century needed an updated version of the flying carpet. Forget magic, Rahul took the path of science, or rather, pseudoscience. In his shed, he assembled a flying carpet from an old rug, straight from his grandmother's living room, 4 industrial fans, and a battery from an electric scooter. His plan? To fly over his neighbor's yard and become a TikTok star. Rahul turned the fans on full blast, holding onto a homemade frame, which, by the way, was held together with duct tape and prayers. But instead of flying, the carpet caught fire from an overheated battery, and Rahul, trying to extinguish the fire, got tangled up in the wires and received a fatal electric shock. Neighbors say he shouted, "I am the king of the sky," right before his dream was knocked out. Rahul, my friend, if you want to fly, buy a plane ticket. Or at least read the instructions for the fans. Spoiler, they are not for flying. Number 27. 27-year-old Kenji, the self-proclaimed Mr. Underwater Elon Musk, decided that diving was boring and that real heroes swim with their own gadgets. His ingenious idea: a homemade underwater scooter made of plastic pipes, an old electric motor from a washing machine, and a, well, almost waterproof battery container. Kenji planned to race underwater like in a James Bond movie and film it on a GoPro. During his first dive to a depth of 10 meters, the plastic pipes cracked, the battery container flooded, and the motor shorted out. Kenji got tangled up in the hoses of his own scooter and couldn't surface. Rescuers got him out, but unfortunately, the Bond show ended without a sequel. Number 28. Meet Harry, a 42-year-old gardener with attitude who hated weeds more than taxes. Instead of buying herbicide at the nearest store, Harry decided to create the ultimate lawn cleaner, a mixture of gasoline, fireworks powder, and a fuse from an old firecracker. His plan? To blow up the weeds in his backyard and impress his neighbors at the same time. Harry poured the mixture over the lawn, lit the fuse, and boom! The explosion caused a fire that engulfed the entire yard, the shed, and Harry himself. The neighbors called the fire department, but Harry had already passed into the state of eternal lawn. The police found his notebook with the inscription, Weeds, 0, Harry, 1. Well, Harry, it seems the score is a little different. Harry, brother, there is such an invention, a lawnmower. And if you like explosions so much, watch Rambo instead of staging it in your yard. Number 29. Trevor, a 35-year-old sci-fi and DIY enthusiast, decided he needed his own personal robot assistant, like in Star Wars. Without the money for a real robot, or any knowledge of robotics, he assembled a structure out of metal plates, sharp blades, because it looks cool, and a motor from an old vacuum cleaner. His robot was supposed to serve beer from the refrigerator. Cool, right? During a test in his garage, Trevor turned on the robot, but didn't take into account that the motor was unstable and the blades were poorly secured. The robot began to move chaotically, scattering debris, and eventually inflicted fatal injuries on Trevor. Neighbors heard cries of, "He's alive!" But unfortunately, it wasn't HAL 9000, just a pile of scrap metal with dreams of greatness. And that's it for this episode of DIY or Die Trying. If you enjoyed watching humanity tinker its way off the planet, sometimes literally, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because we've got plenty more cautionary tales where these came from. Got a cousin who once tried to turn a lawn chair into a hang glider? Or maybe you try to invent something revolutionary with fireworks in a bucket? Drop your story in the comments. We promise not to judge. Publicly. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and remember, just because you can build it doesn't mean you should. See you in the next one.